Kingdom Hearts is a massive Disney crossover video game series. Like, yes, Final Fantasy stuff is there, but let's be real, this is first and foremost a celebration of all things Disney. At least when ignoring all the original characters and plot, which admittedly is a very big part of the series, but anyway, there's a lot of Disney stuff in these games, and each game has to pick and choose what Disney properties it's gonna include. So it got me thinking, if each game is a collection of Disney properties, how well does each game represent Disney as a whole through the properties it includes? In other words, how good is the Disney representation in each Kingdom Hearts game? I'm looking to have a similar kind of conversation as what we tend to have when talking about stuff like Super Smash Bros. In the context of representing Disney as well as possible, there are a couple important aspects we've got to analyze as we address each game. First, how many distinct properties are represented? You want good representation? Include as diverse a set of properties as you can, right? That's going to be our most basic point of analysis. But these games are limited. You can't possibly include everything to the same extent or the game will never end. So we've got to tier how each property gets represented. After all, getting a fighter in Smash is certainly worth more than getting an assist trophy. So let's do that. The highest honor a Disney property can possibly receive is getting a full world. A tier below that is what I'm basically calling World Light. This covers anything that carries some aspects of full worlds, but to some limited extent, usually due to the nature of the property. Think of things like the 101 Dalmatians in KH1 or Ratatouille in KH3, properties that are difficult to adapt into worlds, so they get the next best thing. This also includes isolated Disney bosses like Chernobog in KH1 or Ursula in DDD. The next tier down is going to be summons, the true assist trophies of Kingdom Hearts. Fun inclusions for sure, but definitely downgrades from our other two tiers. And finally, our bottom tier, which I'm just referring to as cameos. It's exactly what it sounds like. Lastly, if you can't include literally everything, the next best thing is to represent each distinct category of thing as well as possible. We want a healthy mix of everything out there. For Smash, this is stuff like game genre and year of release. As far as Disney goes, genre is kind of a non-factor since pretty much every property is going to fall under the fantasy or adventure genres, with a sprinkling of sci-fi here and there. So we're going to focus on year of release, or era representation. There are like 6 distinct eras of Disney, but for the purposes of this video, we're going to narrow that down to about 3 or 4. Our first era will be the classic era, covering everything from Mickey Mouse and Friends to Winnie the Pooh. Basically everything that released when Walt Disney was actually alive. This is typically split into the Golden and Silver Ages, but since the Golden Age includes a grand total of 5 movies, all of which have the same general vibe as the Silver Age stuff, I'm just merging the two together. The next important era is the Disney Renaissance, all those popular musicals that came out during the 90s. If you're wondering about the era in between the classics and the Renaissance, don't worry about it because clearly Kingdom Hearts didn't. There are a couple more eras after the Renaissance to talk about, but they're all post-KH1, and this intro is long enough as it is, so we'll just talk about them when they become relevant. Looking at our world selection, we've got 5 Renaissance worlds: Atlantica, Agrabah, Halloween Town, Olympus Coliseum, and Deep Jungle. And 4 classic worlds: Monstro, Wonderland, Neverland, and 100 Acre Wood. So there's a slight lean towards Renaissance stuff, but I think that is more than made up for by how much scattered classic era representation is in the game, especially in Traverse Town. Merlin reps the Sword and the Stone, Fairy Godmother covers Cinderella, the 101 Dalmatians are stationed here, and there's even a charming little Lady and the Tramp cameo in the 3rd District. Outside of Traverse Town, the Mickey Mouse crew is of course ever present. We get Chernobog as a boss repping Fantasia, Snow White and the Princess of Heart line up, and none other than Maleficent from Sleeping Beauty as our primary antagonist, at least until Ansem shows up. That's a lot of stuff making up for the imbalance of worlds. Almost a bit too much, but don't worry, Extra Beauty and the Beast Party member is here to perfectly balance the scales. Even the summons for this game are perfectly balanced: Dumbo, Bambi, and Tinkerbell for the classics, and Genie, Simba, and Mushu for the Renaissance. Thanos would be pleased. Not only does KH1 do a fantastic job of balancing its classic and Renaissance representation, but it also manages to include pretty much every major Disney property that existed up to this point in one way or another. The only real standouts that are missing are the Jungle Book, which seems to be a consistent copyright issue for KH, at least that's my assumption, Pocahontas, and The Hunchback of Notre Dame, each of which probably were seen as far too difficult to properly adapt given the subject matter in each, though Hunchback would go on to be in Dream Drop distance, so if that was the issue, clearly they eventually got over it. The lack of Pixar is a bit disappointing, but seeing as Disney didn't even own Pixar yet at the time of KH1's release, it's not too hard a pill to swallow. So yeah, all of my notes feel like just nitpicks. KH1 did a standout job and is the standard to aspire to in the future. It's never gonna be this good again, is it? Since Chain of Memories basically just copied KH1's homework, everything pretty much still stands for this one. Only major change was the deleting of Deep Jungle, which in turn actually perfectly balances the world roster, so that's nice. Though in exchange, a lot of the extra classic representation is also gone. No Merlin, no Fairy Godmother, no Snow White or Cinderella, no 101 Dalmatians, and no Chernobog. But hey, Lady and the Tramp are still here. This all generally makes Com's list of represented properties much less to write home about, but it's a GBA spin-off, that's kind of to be expected. At least the balancing act of classic to Renaissance is still very strong here. And here's where I get to start complaining a lot. Okay, so in reality, KH2 includes about the same number of properties as KH1 does, but the balance is way off, and it's obvious just from looking at the world selection. There are a grand total of 7 worlds based off Renaissance properties. Atlantica, Beast Castle, Agrabah, Halloween Town, Pride Lands, Olympus Coliseum, and the Land of Dragons. What the hell? If you're really obnoxious about how you count worlds in this game, there are at best 4 worlds based off classic properties. Disney Castle, Timeless River, the Mysterious Tower, and 100 Acre Wood. But you and I both know that Disney Castle and the Mysterious Tower do not count. Mysterious Tower isn't even its own world in this game, it's just attached to Twilight Town, and calling it a world based off Fantasia feels kind of disingenuous given the actual world based off Fantasia that we'd get later. And Disney Castle is just the glorified entrance to Timeless River. Besides, Disney Castle and Timeless River rep the same property, so counting them separately doesn't even really mean more classic representation, in my opinion. So yeah, if you couldn't tell, KH2 leans really hard on the Renaissance properties. I think this disparity is the most clear when you realize that 4 of the 5 KH1 worlds that return for this game are Renaissance worlds. They easily could have opted for Wonderland or Neverland instead, but nope, it's all 90s all the time. There are 2 other worlds in this game that come from eras other than Classic and Renaissance, those being Space Paranoids repping Tron from the Dark Age of Disney. If you're wondering about the era in between the Classics and the Renaissance, don't worry about it because clearly Kingdom Hearts didn't. This is the only time in all of KH that this era gets represented, and I am okay with that. And of course Port Royal, repping Pirates of the Caribbean, a 2000s property. The relationship between Kingdom Hearts and 2000s Disney is odd to say the least, mostly because 2000s Disney was, well, odd. Lilo and Stitch and Chicken Little get summoned in this game, and that's it for 2000 stuff. It's certainly there, but it's dwarfed by the enormous shadow of the Disney Renaissance over this entire game. We don't even get nearly as much fun extra stuff like the Dalmatians or Chernobog. Peter Pan is a summon, okay, that's nice. The Princesses of Heart get a brief mention in Space Paranoid, so technically Snow White, Cinderella, and Alice in Wonderland showed up. Emphasis on the word, technically. Merlin's back, but you can't really do much with him like you could in KH1. Jiminy Cricket is here for all of one voice scene, and of course Maleficent returns, but you can't fight her. She just does evil stuff in cutscenes before fading into irrelevancy. So, what happened? Why did the Renaissance just fully take over? So, here's my theory. When they were mapping out KH1, they clearly did not have any sequels in mind, so there was a concentrated effort to include as many different Disney properties as possible. They had one shot to make the perfect Disney game, and they put their all into it. KH2 comes around, and that's not really a problem anymore, so they just leaned super hard into what was the most popular at the time, the Renaissance properties. This isn't necessarily a super terrible thing, but I think it's one of the reasons why going through KH2's Disney content can feel kinda boring. So many of these properties already got their due diligence in KH1 since that game made such a strong effort to include everything, and all the Renaissance movies can feel kinda samey in a big picture sense. They are all heavily steeped in the musical theater formula, they all came out around the same time, a lot of them feel very stylistically similar. Like, they're obviously all very distinct movies, but you can feel the similarities when you run through them all in a row. It's one of the reasons why I think this whole idea of diverse Disney representation is important. And mind you, I love KH2. It's my second favorite game in the series, but it's definitely not because of how it handles its Disney content. Briefly stopping down to talk about Days and Coded, both have a very small selection of Disney worlds, both of which lean towards Renaissance properties. Of the 6 worlds in Days, 4 are Renaissance and 2 are Classic, while Coded has 2 Renaissance worlds and 1 Classic world. Though Coded has the added benefit of prominently featuring the Mickey Mouse crew, Jiminy Cricket, and Maleficent, giving an extra boost to the classic stuff. Fittingly, this means Days was more like KH2, while Coded was more like KH1. I'll take this moment to briefly talk about recurring characters, like all the ones I just listed. Whether or not I see them as strong representation really depends on how they're handled in each instance. Therefore, they don't really fit comfortably into any tier per se. We kinda have to play it by ear with things like Jiminy, Maleficent, Yensid, or Pete. All that said, it's kinda hard to count the Mickey Mouse crew every time, seeing as they're pretty much always prominently featured. Like, it's great that you're here, but you're always here, so do we even really need to keep pointing you guys out? I don't know. Again, we'll be going case by case with this stuff. So, weirdly enough, Birth by Sleep is kind of the antithesis to KH2, choosing to almost entirely focus on classic properties over Renaissance stuff. Of the 7 Disney worlds, 5 are classic. Dwarf Woodlands, Castle of Dreams, Neverland, Enchanted Dominion, and the odd case of Disneytown, which I'll talk more about in a bit. There's also the Mysterious Tower, but again, it really shouldn't count as a world. The 2 remaining worlds are Olympus Coliseum repping the Renaissance and Deep Space repping the 2000s. In addition, all the extra Disney stuff in this game all leans classic, those being the Monstro Boss in the Mirage Arena, Merlin again, and the 100 Acre Wood command board. Okay, doubling back to Disney Town, it's clearly an expansion of the generic Mickey Mouse world established by Disney Castle and KH3, but at the same time it seems to be reflecting Mickey's Toontown in the Disney theme parks. Couple that with the little passes Ven needs to get in, and the Million Dreams reference, we might have to call this one theme park representation rather than Mickey Mouse representation. That still means it lands squarely in the classic era, but thought it was worth clarifying. So, what gives? Why the complete opposite extreme? Well, surprise surprise, BBS is going for a theme with its selection of Disney properties. Since BBS is a prequel, the Disney stuff reflects that and leans heavily towards older material. The never-completed Jungle Book world further supports this. I kinda like this idea. Seeing as BBS is a smaller game, choosing to theme the Disney stuff to make up for the smaller pool of properties is a great idea, and I think it lends itself well to establishing a strong identity for the game. If KH2 actually had a thematic reason to lean so heavily on the Renaissance, maybe I would have let it slide. It helps that BBS kinda supplements KH2 in a way. Both games taken together end up creating a very well-rounded selection of Disney properties. So yeah, if not for the cool theming, then BBS gets away with this just for picking up KH2's slack. Dream Drop is another smaller game, so the actual quantity of properties is easily the most lacking it's ever been, for a game that's actually deemed worthy to be on home consoles by the Square Enix gods. That said, despite there only being 5 Disney worlds, they represent the different eras of Disney very well. Prankster's Paradise and Symphony of Sorcery rep the classics, the City of Bells reps the Renaissance, and Country of the Musketeers and the Grid rep the 2000s. Technically, Tron Legacy is a 2010s thing, but given that DDD came out right as the 2010s were just getting going, I feel comfortable lumping the Grid with the 2000s for this game. So the only real issue here is the Renaissance gets kinda screwed. Except not really, because look, there's that Ursula boss. Not a full world, but it certainly helps out. We also get the typical slew of Disney characters running around, Mickey Mouse and Friends, Yen Sid, Maleficent, and a brief mention of Merlin. Nothing to really write home about, but it's there. Oh, and Lady and the Tramp returns alongside Traverse Town, plus now this Mad Hatter sign is the only Alice in Wonderland representation, so savor it. And there's Julius from a 90s Mickey Mouse short, so I guess that's another Renaissance boss for you. So the scales are pretty balanced, but at what cost? This world selection is completely absurd, and a lot of the biggest Disney names are completely absent. BBS had a limited selection too, but you can't deny the properties they went with are far more recognizable than what we've got here in DDD. Well, I do think DDD is actually going for some theming here, though admittedly it's less cohesive than what BBS did. But look, every world in this game is a property that, given what was established in previous games, could not exist under really any context. So DDD, a game about diving into worlds in a weird time travel limbo, decided to use as many out-of-the-box properties as possible that they probably would have never been able to use under any other circumstance. Pinocchio, Tron, and Mickey Mouse had all been done in the past in certain ways, and only through this time travel nonsense could they have realistically been explored again in the unique ways that DDD explores them. That leaves Hunchback as the odd one out, but given, again, the subject matter this movie tackles, maybe they thought they would only be able to get away with it in a smaller title. Who knows? This gives us 5 technically brand new worlds that realistically could have never been explored in any other context. Maybe it's a stretch to call this a theme, but I think it contributes to the strange, dreamlike vibe that DDD is attempting to establish. So yeah, well-balanced and decently themed. Still nothing close to what KH1 accomplished, but I think DDD deserves the silver medal for sure. I'm grouping these two together because there's really not much to say. They both go for a bit of theming, Union Cross using all 6 Princess of Heart worlds, and 0.2 using the Fallen world from BBS. Cool. I'm sorry, but 0.2 is such a small game and Union Cross is such an annoying game that that's really all I've got in me. I don't even want to think about possibly researching all the different Disney medals that are in Union Cross, so let's just move on to what we all really want to talk about. Okay, so there are 8 Disney worlds in KH3. 1 classic, 100 Acre Wood, 2 Renaissance, Toy Box and Olympus, 2 from the 2000s, Monstropolis and the Caribbean, and 3 from the modern Disney era, the 2010s, Kingdom of Corona, Arendelle, and San Francisco. As far as balance goes, it could be worse. The classic representation is helped by the inclusion of the Classic Kingdom minigames and the attraction flows repping more theme park stuff. Also, I guess Alice in Wonderland and Peter Pan if you want to count Mad Teacups and Pirate Ship as representation for that. In addition, we get 2 Renaissance summons, Ariel and Simba, 1 2000s summon, Stitch, and 1 modern summon, Wreck-It Ralph. The 2000s is also helped out by the inclusion of the Bistro repping Ratatouille, and of course our merry band of classic main characters all return, Mickey and Friends, Yen Sid, Jiminy Cricket, Maleficent, Merlin, even Fairy Godmother and Remind. So the gang's all here. Again, as far as era balance goes, it could be much worse. But I'm kind of burying the lead here. This is Kingdom Hearts 3. We're out of side game hell. There should be a mountain of different Disney properties in this game, and there just isn't. So many major properties are just completely absent. How is it that KH3 has less Disney properties in it than both KH1 and 2? Well, there are a couple reasons I can think of. First of all, KH3 opted to include less worlds in favor of making those worlds as expansive as possible. A trade-off that I think pays off pretty well, but does mean less properties overall get included. Secondly, it seems that at some point 0.2 was going to be a part of KH3, but got separated in order to not bog down KH3's pacing. If 0.2 had been included and brought along those Snow White, Cinderella, and Sleeping Beauty bits, that probably would have helped this whole representation problem quite a bit, and that was probably the original plan. Thirdly, Kingdom Hearts as a series really encourages players to play every single game, so repeating worlds for properties that have already been done gets really tiring really fast, and they can't just keep doing that for the sake of representation. Finally, and most prominently, as the years go by, more and more Disney stuff just keeps coming out. The idea of squeezing every relevant Disney property into one game the way KH1 did is simply becoming an impossible task, especially now with the Pixar floodgates having been thrown wide open. So, what's the solution to this whole representation query? Do we just stop caring? Not that I think anyone but me really cared about this, but a guy can dream. Well, I think the answer is actually pretty simple. Kingdom Hearts should lean more into the whole theming idea presented by BBS and DDD. There isn't really any sort of theme to KH3's world selection at all, at least not one that cohesively ties the majority of them together. I assume they were just gunning to include Pixar and modern properties and didn't think too hard about how everything would gel together. But now that initial effort to include Pixar and modern Disney has been made, hopefully future titles can take a step back and really try to make something worthwhile out of the world selection. Thankfully, KH4 is looking like it might do just that. We have very little to go off of right now, but seeing how Donald and Goofy seem to be in the underworld to investigate Sora's death, it's possible that all of KH4's Disney worlds will be themed around exploring death in some way. That would be extremely cool and an interesting way to represent Disney in Kingdom Hearts, now that Disney is so expansive it can't all be realistically squeezed into a new game. Wait, aren't I forgetting something? Hey, look, it's all the Disney stuff from across the Kingdom Hearts series squeezed into one game. Neat. Obviously, it's not quite the same as something like a KH1, but Melody of Memory really is a nice consolation prize that I feel is an appropriate farewell to the idea of the ultimate Kingdom Hearts game that literally includes every possible Disney thing. It's not perfect. Winnie the Pooh is weirdly completely absent. Tarzan, Pirates of the Caribbean, and Wreck-It Ralph get practically nothing to work with. Fantasia gets its budget world rather than the full Symphony of Sorcery, and apparently Nightmare Before Christmas and Tron characters weren't invited despite their worlds being in the game. But literally everything else is here, so it's hard to complain. I mean, it's not hard, I just did a whole 53 words of complaining, but you know what I mean. So, with Melody of Memory as our guide, let's look at the bigger picture here. Rather than granularly looking at each game, let's ask how well Kingdom Hearts as a series represents Disney. Well, I think the most glaring issue is the complete lack of any animated Dark Age material. Yeah, all these movies were subpar at best, but they are a part of Disney history, so they should be included in some fashion, right? Maybe just a cameo? Other than that, the previously mentioned Jungle Book and Pocahontas would be nice. Well, Jungle Book would be nice. Pocahontas might be best left forgotten. As for the 2000s, I feel like everyone's got their favorites from this era, mine being The Emperor's New Groove and The Princess and the Frog. But realistically, I think Lilo and Stitch and Pirates are all we're gonna get. They're the obscenely popular ones, and they do the job just fine. Of course, the more significant 2000s properties that are missing are all the Pixar ones, but I'm sure those will be included in due time. Same for the remaining 2010s and now 2020s properties. What else? Mary Poppins and Roger Rabbit would be nice. TV stuff? Yeah, I wish. As much as I'd love to see Gravity Falls or the Boiling Isles in Kingdom Hearts, the mass appeal just isn't there. Maybe Phineas and Ferb? Not placing any bets, but who knows? But yeah, once again, I find my notes feeling more like nitpicks. Overall, Kingdom Hearts is quite the effective Disney museum. Can't wait to see what gets in next. Anyway, let's end this whole thing off by doing a little ranking, shall we? Let's do the big 5 KH games by how good their Disney representation is. Number 5, KH2, too much 90s. Number 4, KH3, where is the rest of it? Number 3, BBS, a theme is a wish your heart makes. Number 2, DDD. This is the only time DDD will ever appear in second on any ranking ever. Number 1, KH1, practically perfect in every way. If I were to rank MelMem among these, I guess it would be between DDD and KH1, just on principle since it includes so much, but points off for the weird exclusions and not being an action RPG. Well, that's the video. Go home. Well, hello, all you people who are bad at following instructions. This is the weird outro segment that you get as punishment for not just leaving the video. Okay, so this is really just an excuse to do my little thank you to Regular Pat, mainly for making the Wayfinder project, because Lord knows I would not have done any of this shit if that project didn't exist. If you don't know what the Wayfinder project is, I will definitely link to Regular Pat's explanation video on the topic in the description below. And I guess the second thank you to Regular Pat is for, like, general inspiration. He's kind of become, like, my standard for high-quality Kingdom Hearts content, so I feel like while editing this, I may have consciously or subconsciously just taken a lot of cues from his editing style and his writing style, potentially. My intention really was not to be, like, a copycat with this whole video, but I realized that might end up just being how it is, but I figure I don't really intend to make money off of this, or to make anything like this again, so it's probably fine. But yeah, thanks Pat for being a cool content creator. If you somehow are watching this video and haven't seen a Regular Pat video, what the hell are you doing? You know that Wayfinder project YouTube link? That'll also happily link you to his channel, so like, go watch Regular Pat. Yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say. I hope you enjoyed whatever I ended up putting as a visual over this, because it sure as hell ain't my actual face. Maybe it'll be a Jiminy thing. Like a loop of Jiminy Cricket. That's probably what it's gonna be. Hope you enjoyed the loop of Jiminy Cricket and whatever music I used earlier in this video, but again, alright, bye.